can't fix this. Everything sucks right now. This is the worst. I can't. Or I make a decision to say, like, it is what it is. Like all that shit that happened, and there's a pile of shit over there. The only way that pile of shit moves, if I
Yep.
pick up a shovel and start moving it.
Yep.
Who took the shit or pick the
Yep.
shovel up and move it, right?
So a lot of the owners that I've talked to say, I wanted autonomy. I wanted control of my time or the direction I go in. I think for a lot of them, that's it. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely that. I think a lot of entrepreneurs that are willing to take that risk and roll the dice do it from the standpoint of like I didn't want to work for somebody else. I didn't want to be told what to do, or I had these creative ideas to go try on my own, and they had the guts to go do it. So I think it comes from this core motivation of either not wanting to report to somebody else or to that you can do it on your own, right? And they are not really that different. They're one and the same. But that's probably the foundation of it, at its core,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
the idea of like I want to provide a better life and those kinds of you could do that working for somebody else ultimately. It might
Yep.
take you
Yeah.
longer, might not, hit as big, but that's probably at its core one of the things we hear the most common. I don't know if you hear things differently, but that's what I get.
Yeah, I know there's some other podcasts out there that talk about profit first models. And I know that a lot of owners, it really is about autonomy and control of time and stuff like that. But there are owners that say, I just want to make a lot of money.
Hmm.
And I think that scoreboard of how successful I am is tied to what's in the bank account. And you're right, I'm here in Rochester. We call it the town of Mayo Clinic, and a cardiac surgeon can make $500,000 a year salaried working for somebody else, and that is a good income.
Hmm.
But unless you're running your own system or running a mega corporation with massive payouts, for most of us average folk, we're limited in income earning unless we start our own thing.
Yeah, I think, you do a lot of coaching, so I'm curious to pick your brain on this. When I say coaching, right, outside of even just like professional coaching, I think that personal development side of it. And when we're talking about motivation, for me, that's a more important side of it, right? We ask, in interviews or, in conversations, like, tell me your why. And I think that
Mhm.
that's a challenge for people to really identify. And most times too, in an interview, people are telling you the thing that they think you want to hear, right?
Yeah.
And I don't. I want to hear your why to know if it's good enough to like do what we do. So that core thing, right? I want to make a lot of money.
Yep.
Well, that sounds great. Okay, fine. Like, sure, doesn't everybody, but that you could just go play the lottery every week, and that's still the same
Yep.
thing. You're trying to, make a lot of money that way. I guess how do you get as a coach? How do you get at the core of identifying like somebody's why, and not just like the name of it, but like the like the real why?
Yeah. Yeah. Get to the heart of what gets them up in the morning. I believe, and this came from my coach too, right? Nothing new is really created under the sun. It's just rediscovered over and over again. To the extent in which you answer three questions well, which is where am I? What am I all about? And what do I want? That is where action happens. That how becomes inevitable when you get clarity on those things. And I've coached people through major life transitions because they were uncomfortable in the situation they were in that was serving a purpose but not serving their kind of root desire for their life. And that what am I all about is kind of your why statement.
Yeah.
What am I all about? What gets me up in the morning? And so for me, it's usually, in most cases, it's about 6 months of inner work, going through personal assessments. Start with Myers-Briggs. It's pretty wide open in general. Move into something like Strengths Finders or the Enneagram, and
Mhm.
start to build language around who am I. These are key attributes of myself and what I'm into, and then we boil it down to what is kind of a life purpose statement. And it's pretty profound when you can point to that one thing and go, oh yeah, that's me.
I like it. So those three questions, you mind listing those again? Because we went through them kind of quick,
Sure.
and I feel like that's a great takeaway for a listener. And again, writing those
Yeah.
things down is always key. So what were those three?
Yeah, so the first one is where am I? And that's not a physical location. It's a locating reality. When you think about who you are, many of us have identity imposed on us by others. As a child, oh, you look just like your father, or oh, you're just like your mother, right? Or you're behaving like your brother, or whatever it is. And so other people start putting identity markers on us. We've got parents that speak into their children's lives and say, you will be, pick it, you will be a doctor when you grow up, or you will be, you're going to work for the family plumbing business when you get older. And so you've got people that speak identity over you. And so answering that, where am I, is going, let me actually do the work to acknowledge me.
Yeah.
And you separate what is from what people say should be. The phrase "don't should on me," right? Matt, you and I are married. Married men will jokingly or lovingly say we are victims of shoulds. Our spouses very generously say, hey, you should take the trash out. Hey, you should do that project this weekend. Hey, you should lose 10 pounds probably.
Yeah.
Hey, you should play with the kids more. Hey, you should, right? And a lot of times it's well intentioned, but shoulds are not reality. And so when people say you should be, you should be smarter, you should be more outgoing, you should be more entrepreneurial, you should be a better employee, you should be whatever it is. And we don't want to distract from what people say over us or even ourselves. I can should on myself. I'm 45. I should lose 20 pounds, right?
Yeah.
But let's not say what should be. Let's talk about what is. This is me right now. And these are my tendencies. And so that's the first one, is really just dialing in. If I can remove the distractions of others, who am I? Where am I located right now? What's my center?
It's a deep question. You'd be
Yeah.
prepared for the answer, I guess, there too, right?
Yeah.
So, and the second question was, remind me again there.
Yeah. What am I? It's where am I? What am I all about?
What am I all about? That's it.
And then what do I want? And the what am I all about really is that personal mission statement. And Simon Sinek did the why discovery. I just saw a video of him on TikTok. This was like 15 years ago. He did that TEDx. I think it was in Seattle.
Yeah.
The thing's been viewed millions and millions of times now. And he put an infographic up on the target. And what is your why statement? And it's important to not be married to it, but articulate it, right?
Yeah.
As we develop as a human, there's kind of a first half of life and second half of life, where that first half of life, you're checking boxes, get a job, get a significant other, maybe get the house or the boat or the kids or, the dog or whatever those things are that you had on your list. And then the second half of life is what we'll call midlife. Like that midlife crisis is, I checked all those boxes, what's next? And so the initial, what am I all about, is, acknowledge where you're at in life and say, am I still in line with who I am? And the work I did for myself is, I realized that a very clear statement for myself is quality relationships. Very simple, 2 words, quality relationships. That's the way I operate. I have a degree in psychology. I'm a coach. I'm a manager. I do all of these things, but I do all of them through the lens of, I'm going to create quality relationships wherever I go. It's either in my own. I've been married 21 years. I have 5 kids. I'm going to be attentive to that in my personal life, and at work, I'm going to make sure I set up the people I interact with to have those. And Matt, you and I have talked about the importance of growing a great organization is the people, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've probably said it on almost every episode, right? And you're 100%, I think, spot on with that. When, one of the things I'm thinking about as you're going through these questions, and again, I know I made you say them a couple times, but I think they're important and they're hard to answer.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I think is really critical, right? So, and we're talking about it from a motivation standpoint, but in order to, know what's going to motivate you and keep it front of mind or top of mind, you got to know these things. I find even myself, right? I would always answer these questions for the longest time, like you said, about the way I needed to take care of others inside of these questions, or the way I needed to be for others inside of these questions. And that's a good quality to have. I don't think that's a bad quality to have at all. But in order to be the best at doing those things for others, I need to be at my best. I need to know what makes me go at my most efficient rate or run the hardest that I'm going to run. And that has to be about me, right? Like you mentioned relationships. And what's interesting is the way you said that originally is, as much as that might be for others, that's mostly for you. That's something that
Mhm.
you need to be
Yep.
feel successful for yourself, right? And to feel good about yourself and those kinds of things. So it's really important. Again, we ask the question of like, what's your why to a lot of people for
Mhm.
like an interview process, for example. And the most common canned answers is, I want to provide a better life for my wife, for my kid.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Why do you want to do that? What is
Yep.
different about that for you? Like that's why I'm asking that question, because at the end of the day, motivation that's just, fulfills others, right? Even if it's your family, your kids, which is really important. I'm not belittling that
Yep.
in any way, shape, or form, but it still has a tendency to slide if it's not like for the individual. Like at the end of the day, we're all, a 1% maybe more selfish than that kind of thing. So you have to know
Yeah.
yourself and those things. I think those are awesome questions.
Yeah. Well, and the beautiful thing about knowing that why and having it dialed in is it actually guards you against burnout.
Yeah,
Like
I
that's
think
a
so.
big thing to talk about.
You know, you and I were talking about this. I think it was yesterday or the day before, but I had a moment not too long ago where I was sitting in my truck before the day is supposed to start. I guess I would say it that
Mhm.
way, right? And our owners, that's who we started talking about here, right? And all of them and top leaders can relate to these days, and they happen from time to time, or they happen consistently during periods of times. Probably was already 4 or 5 calls deep, and
Yep.
different reps, different problems, different production problems with customers and those kinds of things. And I had to like will myself out of the car and into the building. I was hitting that
Mhm.
wall, and I realized that I was also not very good at home at the moment as well too. And again, I think what I realized in that moment, maybe couldn't have articulated it, was that there was a lack of focus on why I did what I did and why I
Mhm.
was passionate about what I did. And instead, it was about everybody else's needs, which is again important. They need me there. I get
Yep.
that. But if I lose that motivation, the thing that makes me excited about what I do, then it just becomes chaos. And I'm a really hard worker. I will work until I can't stand up anymore, but the chaos won't go away just because I work really hard.
Yeah.
So I need to make sure I'm focused on those things. It's really critical.
Yep.
So when you're coaching people, Jay, you've identified this why, right? So we got an owner. Hey, this is at the core of why I started the business. This is, where I am now and where I want to be and why I'm doing what I'm doing. But that moment in the truck's coming, right? What are tools or things that we can give, somebody in one of those coaching situations that one, here's how you set yourself up for subtle reminders on a daily basis, or check-ins on your
Mhm.
why. And then like when that truck moment happens, like take a breath and, remind yourself of that too.
Mhm. Yeah, one of the things that it's hard to get them to do, but I always encourage people to journal. It's we've talked about this previously too. Our mind doesn't hold everything in it simultaneously. We have to go back and pull it back up.
Hmm.
And to your point when you said in the truck, you realized a lot of what you were doing was just serving other people's agendas.
Hmm.
And we can get caught in that routine of just going through the motions and taking care of others. And like you said, again, that's a good thing. We're supposed to be doing that. But when we lose ourselves to it, and so journaling, I tell people, what's wrong right now, and they're like, well, I'm unfulfilled. I say, well, the first step is just notice. So for the next week, I want you to notice the things that are unfulfilling and just journal about them. We're not going to fix it. We can't fix it today. And so I think that that's a big deal is once you've kind of done this work to articulate who you are, start noticing, be a noticer, be curious. And a great way to keep a record of that is obviously a journal.
There's a real power in writing it down. One, to identify and give you a list to start working on if you need
Mhm.
to. Sometimes I think you find when you write those things down, they become a little more insignificant than you make them feel in that moment. In our conversation the other day, I was reminded that I'm not doing that enough. Jay, unbeknownst to him, was coaching me in that moment, which was nice. But I used to have a habit of like before I went to bed, I would keep a journal next to my bed, and it's a simple notepad, and you're not talking about, anything that like Ernest Hemingway would have wrote in there. It's a word or two or a quick sentence about, hey, things that didn't get finished today, or topics that didn't get covered today, or I got to finish this tomorrow kind of thing. Things that would
Yeah.
otherwise keep me up in the middle of the night or wake me up in the middle of the night. Sometimes writing those things down, like this was a frustration thing today, and I'm going to think through this tomorrow about how to make this better. I wake up the next day and go like, dude, you're an idiot. Let it go.
Yeah. Right.
Like,
Yep.
somebody stepped on your shoes, like, who cares? Like, like, just wipe them off and go on with the next thing. Like, they're like, that's not what I would write, but that's like the equivalent of what would
Mhm.
be in there at times. So writing them
Yeah.
down kind of almost takes the power away from some of those things that are robbing you from that motivation and that passion that you had. I think that's really critical.
Yeah, and it's an opportunity to go back and revisit, what are my top 5 values?
Mhm.
And as you're writing stuff down, you're going, "Oh, geez, somebody should on me today," and I let myself be misaligned with, who I am and what I'm all about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important. And I think it is a weird thing, right? I don't know that well, I guess one or two of them might know now that I have a journal, but my
Mhm.
buddies probably would make fun of me, right? But they probably have
Mhm.
journals too. So, they'll get poked fun at, kind of those that can spell, they have journals. So
Mhm.
we teach others to go through this process, and we talk about it, and I think we've done on a previous episode too, understanding like goal setting, which in a way is talking about motivation and that kind of thing, and being in tune with that. How as a leader do you become better in tuned with people? Like how, like you as a coach, I would bet before you have people answer these questions, have a pretty good idea after 2, 3 months of what the answers are going to be, right?
Mhm.
That didn't happen by accident. And that didn't happen on your first coaching session, like with the first individual. You developed those skills and that ability over time. What are ways that we could maybe give people to look at, or that you try to pay attention to, things that help you identify, like, hey, this is something I need to lean into with this person to let them know, like, this is the thing that sounds like gets you all going, gets you out of bed.
Mhm. Always active listening and pay it, it's language is such a powerful tool. And when they say this makes me so mad, all you have to do is go so mad and then silence, right? I think that's a powerful thing to let them go, what do I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so you start to pay attention to and then challenge it. A great coach is just gonna say, well, what if it wasn't? What if that wasn't a big deal? What do you mean, what if it wasn't a big deal? It was a huge deal. Okay, cool. Like let's just play devil's advocate together. What if it wasn't?
Right.
And so I think that, in that relationship, and you can ask these questions of yourselves, I think that, every great coach hopes that their clients leave with skills to coach themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so sit with yourself, ask yourself, what is going on inside my head or my heart right now that has me, misaligned or unsettled or excited, the opposite, those positive emotions. Why am I so amped up about this?
Yeah.
Why am I up at 3 a.m. watching a baseball game? Right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For those of you that don't know, the Dodgers and the Blue Jays might have played the greatest game that's ever been played in a World Series. And
Mhm.
my dumb self stayed up for every single pitch of that game.
Yep.
That was on Monday night, I think, and I'm still
Yeah.
feeling it today. So it's
Yeah.
3 o'clock on the East
Yep.
Coast, and but the coolest part was, I think, one of my motivations is making sure I'm connected with my kid. And
Yep.
he came in and woke me up an hour later, and we recapped the entire game. So that was worth it. But
Mhm. Yeah.
not so much today, but being awake the whole time because I got highlights and stuff.
Yeah.
You said something that was, good. You touched on the idea of things not being such a big deal, right? And letting go of some things, and we both kind of talked a little bit about it. And the way you asked that question without even really asking the question, I think is really important. Most people want to like vent and think that
Mhm.
venting is like, I just need to get it off my chest. The challenge that we have when we're the person listening to it is, if you listen, you give power to it and almost credibility to it to a certain extent, right? Or at a certain point, it crosses over into like confirming that frustration. And what
Yeah.
that one response you're doing does a great job of, it goes, okay, justify it,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
And it is this weird like stop in the track of like, okay, sure, yeah, no problem. Well, because of, yeah, no, it's not that big of a deal. I was having a conversation with a rep earlier today, and he was actually not. We were just talking through some things that leaders have to do. Sometimes it's good to give them a peek behind the curtain. And I know your team deals with this on a regular basis. Unfortunately, for my people, salespeople, we should have
Mhm.
never have gone, right? And the question I will always ask the rep is, okay, how would you like them to dig out the information that they should have found? How? We should qualify it. Okay, how? And well, we should ask this or whatever. And they start to go down a path of, okay, well, is it fair that they might not know what that term means? And they just said, yeah, yeah, no, we don't have that. Or they thought it was something else or didn't hear it right or something along those lines. Okay. So you ask those questions like where you're frustrated. Yeah, you drove 2 hours somewhere. It stinks. I get it. I understand. Okay. But let's also now take a step and think about these things and think about, again, the motivation of this. Do you really believe somebody's out to get you or
Yeah.
that somebody really failed this? Well, no.
Mhm.
Okay, but that's the way you're coming across. The further point of this is you do understand that like you going to a bad lead and not selling it means that an installer doesn't have or even further than that, someone in the office doesn't have paperwork to process, meaning that the hours they're getting paid for don't matter anymore. And they don't have a job to hand off to an installer to do. So they're sitting around doing nothing. And then the people that collect payment on the backside don't have any payments to collect, which means that there's no money going into the bank, which means that all the way back around the other end of the cycle, marketing doesn't get any new dollars to generate a
Mhm.
lead for that person who
Yep.
set this appointment to call on. Like when you lose, we all lose. So
Yep.
we're going to lose occasionally. It's going to happen. Right. So, like, again, understand the motivation of like what was given to you and how it was given to you is big too, and why this would happen. You have some constructive feedback. Great. Right. But bitching isn't going to get it done either. And it might just be
Yeah.
one of those things when you say it out loud, it's not that big of a deal. Right. Like,
Yeah.
I get it. It's stuck. It's stunk. I don't want to drive 2 hours and not have anything to do with it either. But it's going to happen every now and again. It shouldn't happen all the time, but it's going to happen every now and again. And like
Yeah.
sometimes you just got to let it go and focus on the things you can't control that are going to get you closer to the thing you want. Get closer
Mhm.
to that third question you asked, right? Where you need to go. But you can't do that with things that are outside of your control, just the things that are. And it's a hard
Right.
thing for us to let go because we're emotional beings. And yeah, I get pissed off and yell at people behind the wheel when they're not there. And then, it's like, no, it's okay. I had to get it out that
Yep.
way. But it's
Yep.
it's hard as a leader, like as a coach, I'm sure you run into that too. At a certain point, like you got to let them get it out. Do you
Mhm.
do you have like an identifier for yourself when you're in that role to say like that's enough? I need to stop the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I gotta think of an example. I'm an active listener, and I tend to favor more the like therapist side of coaching, so I can get caught in the rut of letting them speak.
Mm-hmm.
And so for myself, I pay attention to, is this going to go anywhere? And is it an opportunity for me to challenge assumptions, or is it, or are, and like, do they want to do anything about it?
Mm-hmm.
And so when they come in, and it's called checking the temperature, right? You have somebody come into your office, and a great question to say is, how are you?
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to say, I'm fine. And you go, cool. What does fine mean? They're going to say, I don't know, the day's okay. And you go, oh, so you went from fine to okay, but why the change?
Mm-hmm.
And now they're trying to explain, well, actually, you know what? It's not great. I just went on a 2-hour drive to a bad lead that should have never been scheduled, right? And so then I check that temperature in the meeting, and then I say, okay, cool. Is this something we need to work on today? And usually at the beginning, they're going to say, yeah, it is. I want to sift through this. I don't understand why I had a big deal, such a big issue with this. But if I accidentally let it get off the rails, like I didn't realize that they were taking me down a rabbit trail of useless conversation, I will say something to the effect of, so what can we do about this?
Mm.
And then they have to acknowledge it. I either just wanted to vent, or I was hoping you would help me find a solution. Right. And it leads to, I get a lot of people that I ask a question like that, but hey, what if it wasn't? Or what do you want to do about it? They go, I don't know. And I love I don't knows,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because an I don't know typically means one of two things. I do know, but I don't want to tell you,
Yeah. Too
right?
prideful.
It might mean, yeah, I might have to take ownership of something I don't want to take ownership. I might have to take action on something that I don't want to take action on. And so I'm going to say, yeah, I don't know. Or it means I sincerely don't know. And I just look at that with enthusiasm. I go, oh, you and I are about to find out.
Yeah.
Right. And so I get to go in and say, well, what could it be? If you were, for top of mind, say the first thing comes to mind,
Yeah.
answer your own question.
I'm gonna have to ask Courtney if she felt as uncomfortable about how excited about your face as I got right there. Like you got real excited. I feel like I should put like a seatbelt on with that. Like it's gonna be a bumpy road, but we're gonna get through it, right? Yeah, it's a, and I think it's funny because you and I balance each other out in a lot of ways. I think that's one of the
Mhm.
reasons you and I get along and enjoy bouncing ideas off of each other. When you're looking at the conversation, And I need to be better about letting it go longer at times. And I think you will say the opposite. You need to cut it off sooner. My key has always been in those professional, hey, you work for me conversations. If I feel you taking me down, or as a coach or a consultant, like if you're taking me into the negative too far and I feel myself going there, this isn't productive. Right.
Yeah.
And I used to have and I might have talked about it previously as well too, but one of the phrases I would say on a regular basis is, it is what it is. Okay. That's over. It's done. Can't change what happened. Is there anything to learn from it? And correct. If not, then sometimes bitching to bitch doesn't help anything and almost makes everything else worse. Like, can we just let it go? Do you need to do this to be heard? Because if you do, that's fine. But I don't have a response for you because I can't change what happened. We can only change what's going to happen. And unfortunately, for too many of us, right? Like on that truck moment where I'm, drowning a little bit, if I don't have an it is what it is mentality, then my other choice is to just like sit in the hole and dig deeper, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, nothing wrong. I can't fix this. Everything sucks right now. This is the worst. I can't. Or I make a decision to say, like, it is what it is. Like all that shit that happened, and there's a pile of shit over there. The only way that pile of shit moves is if I pick up a shovel and start moving it.
Yep.
So do I want to focus on who took the shit or pick the shovel up and move it? Right? Like it's the only thing I can do. And at the end of it, at the end of it, we can talk about how the shit got. But right now, the shit's got to move.
I see, or I want to make an impact on my community or something like that. And so they come in with a motivation, but then, like you said, bad things happen and they're not equipped to handle it. And so they, maybe it was childhood. My dad talked to me about Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will, right? Well, that you find what you're looking for. And so you can be motivated to make a difference, but if you're always looking for the things that go wrong, you're going to think everything goes wrong all the time. And it isn't true. And so then you're still motivated to make a difference, but you realize that you have to level up your skills. You have to level up your mindset, a catchy word, right? You have to level up your ability to look for opportunities and look for the good rather than look for what's going wrong. And that trickles down too, when you have somebody come into your office and you realize that they're just spitting fire, you need to be able to set them back on the right path. Because I heard it recently. I'm sure it's a very old phrase. One bad apple poisons the barrel. And paying attention to that, sometimes you can be the bad apple.
100%.
And sometimes someone on the team is the bad apple and you go, hey, we need to pull you out of that before you make it worse.
Yeah. So, as the leader of the organization, you set the tone, right? And your motivation or lack thereof becomes everybody else's motivation or lack thereof as well, to an extent. Like your why won't become somebody else's why, but the motivation to it is what it is and on to the next step can be somebody else's motivation too. And far too often we work with people or we hear people or we've worked for people where when things start going wrong, they start, well, this is what's broken and that thing's never worked and they never worked this situation and this, that, the other. And I'm like, okay, you just described the pile of shit. What are you going to do to fix it? Because that is what it is. That's what, like, yeah, they made a mistake. It's going to happen. Guess what's going to happen again tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. So if we're not okay with that, like you probably chose the wrong profession. We need to pick up the shovel and start moving shit. Let's go. And the funny thing though is like, if that's how you talk, then everybody else only just continues to pile shit onto the pile. Shit, constantly, right? And it reminds me of, I coached baseball for a long time. There was this field that we played at. I actually grew up playing at this field and I'll never forget it. This concept of where you put your mind is where you're going to positive or negative or anywhere in between, left or right, that's where you're going. But there's this field that I grew up playing, and I'd be curious to know if it still has the same thing. I'm pretty old, so it probably doesn't. But there was this light in center field, and if you were facing a right-handed pitcher, light was no big deal at all. Right? If you were facing a left-hander, it was just close where it could be a problem. The only way it was ever a problem, though, was if somebody mentioned that damn light. And the first time I ever noticed it as a player was the guy in front of me strikes out, comes back, walking back, goes, man, I couldn't see the ball. That damn light, was in the way. And I went, light, what light? I went, oh, that light is the only thing I saw the rest of the game. It was the worst game I probably ever played. right?
Yep.
I wanted to kill that guy. Like, you had to say something about the light. I didn't see it. We had played like 4 innings already. I hadn't seen
Yep.
the light. I'm a catcher. I'm
Yeah.
looking out that way the whole time. So when I
Mhm.
coached, Jay, I used to pull my coaches aside and I'm like, look, if any of you say anything about the light, I'm gonna ask you to turn your stuff in. Don't say anything
Yep.
about that light because we play there regularly.
Yep.
If you hear one of the kids in the dugout mention that light, you grab them and walk them out of the dugout as far as you can
Yep.
and talk to them about the importance of not making the light a big.
Mhm.
And it was wild. Every other team would complain about the light, and we hit better at that field than we hit anywhere else.
Mhm.
And it was never a problem because it's where we put.
Yeah. Yeah, and in management or in leadership, it's really hard to not give too much attention to what is wrong because you're trying to. And I think one of the cool things about being in leadership is you actually get to call out the best of people and of circumstances. And so you might walk into on a Monday morning and the last week was bad.
Mhm.
And you can sit there with your team and be like, God, it was so bad. And what are we going to do? And I don't know if we, like, or you can walk in and be like, hey, we had all these missed opportunities last week. I'm so excited for the opportunity for us to get on the phone. I'm excited for us to connect with people that just weren't ready last week.
Mhm.
And you're saying the same thing. You're saying, hey, we left a lot on the table last, but you're doing it from a very different perspective of look at what's in front of us. We have this great opportunity.
Mhm.
And I was proud of being, I called myself a realist, not a pessimist, not an optimist. I was a realist. I'm like, I just call it how I see it. I'm a straight shooter. And I realized that wasn't.
We all have that one friend that we've always just like justified that, like, well, they're just, yeah, they're just really direct, right?
Yeah.
No, they're an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, they don't understand, like, they got to filter things through something in like different social situations.
Hmm.
But yeah, that it's don't ignore reality, right? But
Hmm.
if you want something to be different, you can't also be hung up on what was or what is. You need to be focused on where you want to go and what you need to do to
Yeah.
get there. That's the only thing that can happen. I had a rep that worked for me at my previous stop, and he really bought into this mindset stuff and motivation and setting. And you and I have talked about. I think that's the only thing that separates top performers from underperformers in any walk of life. But he really bought into it. And what was awesome to see was he would have a bad month like everybody else, and it would start off like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, and he would be awful. Okay.
Hmm.
And like fall off the cliff. He'd call me for a little pep talk or whatever, and we, get him, going in the right direction. And he would show up to the next sales meeting, walk in, and he would look at the board, and he would sit there in front of the board and just kind of go and like point to the top of it where he was at the bottom, bottom two, three, whatever. He would
Hmm.
turn to that person in the room and go, I'm fucking coming for you, and I'm going to catch you
Yeah.
by the end. There are
Yeah.
7 days left. I'll beat you.
Hmm.
And at first, everybody was like, okay, sure thing.
Yeah.
Right. And then it turned into like, come on, man, just like relax. Like, let us get
Yep.
this one. But it was just like, all like, hey, these 2 weeks are over. These 3 weeks are over. But to your point, like, great news is the month's not over. I got
Yep.
7 days left. I got 5 days, 6 days. I can do a lot in that amount of time. I can do so much, in fact, that I could beat your ass for the next 5 days. So much so that I could put you in a pretzel and beat you for the entire month.
Yep.
And I'm telling you, almost 8 times out of 10, he would do it. He would get there
Yeah.
because he just put that energy out there. Some of it was because he got there, and the other of it because the guy would get nervous and he's getting close, and you could see it,
Mhm.
right?
Mm.
But again, it's just like you can will these things into existence. And I know that sounds silly. And look, if I'd have told you 10 years ago that I was, or you told me 10 years ago that I would be talking like this, 20,
Yeah.
I'm like, all right. But I've seen it too many times to not believe it. Like, you just say these things and believe these things and step into that positive attitude mindset. Like, you'll get where you want to go, or you'll
Yeah.
stay where you're staying.
Yeah, and I think that some of this stuff is, in our personal space, the motivation shouldn't be hyper specific. It should be more of a broad identifier, and it helps you overcome setbacks. So when you're like, oh, I'm going to land this job, and you don't land the job, what do? If your goal was to get that dream job, that's too narrow. Have your goal be, I work for a great organization. And then when you don't land your dream job, you go, there's a bunch of great organizations. And I think that people can get hyper fixated on tying identity to specific goals rather than more outcomes. I will be successful this month, not I will close Mrs. Jones on Tuesday. necessarily, though it does have its place. One of the interesting things that you're talking about as we talk about, the sales reps is it's good for the owner, the manager, the people in charge to take the time to ask them what motivates them and hear from them, because a lot of times at the employee level, they don't have the vision or they don't have the stamina to be an owner or a manager, but they do have what it takes to show up each day and perform a series of tasks at a high level. And so checking in with them, and that guy that's like, I'm coming for you, I'm going to beat you, he's got a goal of being a winner, right? He doesn't have a goal of owning the company necessarily, especially maybe not at that time in his life. But those are things where you might not share that same direct, value or goal or objective, but you can come to him and say, hey, did you win?
Yeah.
And just speak their language. Use the words that they use and use them in conversation with them.
Yeah, and being in tune, you ask a good question for somebody like that, right? Did you win today? Ask that when you know they won already.
Mm-hmm.
When you know that they feel like they didn't win, change the question, right? You said it earlier or referenced it earlier about the way you say things is important, right? So, hey, what were some wins you had today? When you know they feel like they didn't, force them to focus on some things that went well. Because, again, I went 0 for 2 today at the plate. Okay, 0 for 3 today at the plate. Sure, you hit 3 screaming line drives at somebody. It's not a bad day. You did a lot of things really well. They just happen to be playing right where, okay.
Yeah.
So like you could focus on the negative, which is like I got a 0 batting average, or like, man, that was Randy Johnson on the mound. I squared him up 3 times. Like that's a big deal. Like I could never have done that for the record, but it's fun to be able to say that on a recording at some point.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and I think that we kind of touched on the 3 things that owners, typical drivers, autonomy, control, a scoreboard. What does winning look like? And they're going to go after winning. Legacy impact. I have a coaching client currently that's in his 60s, and he's going, I actually now have a goal of exiting, but I want to exit well. And what does that look like? And he's saying, when I leave, I want to make sure something is left behind that matters. Right. And so those are 3 big motivators for owners. Managers, I'm in management, you've been in management. One of the things that I love is actually building people and systems. I don't necessarily have the scope for that legacy yet. I do know I'm moving in that direction, but definitely managers and having the owner pay attention to the motivations of the manager. In personal development, a lot of people accidentally climb the ladder 1 rung too high.
Yeah.
And it might be too soon. They might need to develop skills to excel in that position. It might be that next rung is not in line with their values and stuff like that. And so it's important for leaders to check in with their people and say, what's the next step for you? What do you want it to look like? A lot of managers are in management because they want to be the number 2. They want to be the best. And they like to be able to say, I make the owner look good. And so it's an important thing to pay attention to for owners when they're looking for a great man.
Yeah. Wanting other people to do good and be good is noble. It's hard to stay consistent with it because it demands a lot of you at times, and not everybody's going to do all the things you think are best for them, and you're going to be wrong on a pretty regular basis. But it's very rewarding at the end. I think the legacy thing is got to be part of it. At a certain level, if you're going to build something, it's got to be on some level, shape, or form, whether you can articulate it well or not. That's got to be part of it. For me, it would be a good check of the box. Somebody after I'm gone went, found my son and told him that I made a difference. But that would be it. Even if it was just one person, right? Cool. Then I've accomplished something.
That's good. Well, we've been rambling for a while. So why don't we maybe recap and talk about some action points for the listeners, and then
get off your ass, go pick up the shovel and start moving the shit.
That's right. Yeah.
It's not going to move.
Yeah.
I get it. You didn't put it there, but you got to pick it up and start moving it. You can focus on the pile or you can focus on the shovel. It's your choice.
Yeah.
Either way, your motivation is sitting right there. It's got to be the shovel.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and feel free to just be a noticer at first. If you've got something in front of you that you don't know, how to get around it or through it or whatever. Give yourself permission to just notice it for a couple of days and let it sit in front of you.
I think what you'll find in both of those things, the other takeaway is, leaders like to lead because they feel like they can make a difference and people will follow them,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
in both of those scenarios, like when you a problem to figure it out, people will follow you in that process and go, that works. That's the right way to do it. And then when you go to pick up the shovel to start moving the pile of shit, you'll
Mhm.
look behind you and there will be a lot of other people picking up that shovel where you felt very lonely doing it before. But if you're willing to do those two things, it's gonna go. And that's probably at the biggest motivation most leaders or owners have is they want to work together with people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the phrase is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Like it.
That's what great organizations are. All right. And with that, thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.
Happy hunting.
Flirt.